Good day friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Shafiq. In this video I'll talk about Sprint security using JWT authentication. In my last video I've explained how to secure a Sprint point using Sprint security basic authentication with DB authentication. Right, so we'll see that. So in that one we were having these many endpoints. If you see the test 1, test 2, test 3, 4, 5 and 6, and with various roles and the permission. So let's go to the security configuration. Sorry, not security configuration. So if you go here in the application class, so we were using command line runner to insert the records to the H2 database. Right, so we were having user L1, L2, L3 as the roles, and write, read, delete permissions, and we were mapping these permissions to these roles as shown here. And then we had the users as 1, 2, 3 and assign the roles like this. Right, so if you can even go to the H2 database to see it. So if we connect, we can see that we were having all this data. So we were using the bcrypt encoder, so that's why the password is encrypted. And this is the role mapping, and we'll have the roles as mentioned, and then we had the role permissions. Okay, so these were the tables that we had. Let's go back to the IntelliJ now. So in this video we'll start actually from here, because even though we are using JWT authentication, we will use all this mentioned. So what we are actually going to do is that we'll add another layer of security on top of this. So before going there, we will just see what is JWT authentication, how are we going to achieve it, and also some details about JWT. Okay. All right. So in basic authentication, whenever the client was accessing your endpoint, it has to supply the username and the password. So every time that has to be there. So in JWT, that's not the case. So let's see how it works. So let's say that you have a client and server application. So first thing, client is sending a request to the server to authenticate the credentials. So what happens is that client will send the user ID and password to the server to the for authentication, and if the server recognize the user, what it does is that it will generate a JSON token and send it back to the client. Okay, and obviously it will have various details like the name and username and expiration date, and we'll see that later. Now again, if the client wants to access, let's say, another endpoint, say test1, so what it does, and I assume it is a post request, the client will do is it will just send the request body and the JSON token. So the server will pass the JSON token and see whether the user is an authenticated one, and then it proceeds with the response. Same way, if the client wants to send another wants to access another API, so again it will just send the JSON token, and if the token is still valid, it will send back the response. So this is the basic flow of the JWT authentication process. And now let's see the contents of JWT and also the basic structure. Okay, so for that, let's go to the JWT website. Okay, so we are in the JWT website. So if you go to the introduction section, uh, we can say that, okay, what is a JSON Web Token? So JSON Web Token is an open standard that defines a compact and self-contained way for securely transmitting information between parties as a JSON object. So the information can be verified and trusted because it is digitally signed. So it's straightforward. Now I will not be going in depth about JSON here, because that you could do by reading it yourself. So we'll just see the important topics. So if we see what is the JSON structure, it contains three parts separated by a dot. So you will have a header, payload, and signature, and it would look like this. Okay, so let's see the contents. Header. So header typically consists of two parts, which is the algorithm used and what's the type. So you could see it like here, and this is also encoded using base64 URL. And the second part is the payload. So payload contains what they call as claims. So claims are statements about an entity. Okay, so basically in the payload that we will be setting the issuer, issued at, authority, expiration date, audience, etc. So we will see that later, but that's all about the payload. And when you come to the last part, which is the signature, so signature, to create the signature part, you have to take the encoded header, the encoded payload, a secret, and the algorithm specified in the header, and sign that. So we will see how to what kind of signatures that we will be using, and how to sign it in the coding part. Okay, so there is another section called debugger. If you go there, here actually if you want to play with the JSON, this is where you can, if you have a JSON token with you, you can copy paste here and it will decode it and then tell you what it exactly contains. So for example, I have a JSON token which I have created. So let me take that and see. If you see that I was using the chef1 username and the password as 1234, and if I copy this and if I paste this here, see, it will tell me what is the contents of this token. See, it says that algorithm that used is HS256, and this is nothing but a UID, and this is issued at, okay, and this is actually in milliseconds, and this is the subject, which will be the username, and then this is the issuing authority. It can be anything like give, and here it says the expiration date. So this is again in the millisecond. So this is the signature part, and basically this is actually what we called as claims. So claims is nothing but it will return you a hash map, and these will be the keys of the map. Okay, so in this particular example I have set only this much keys. So we have some more keys are there, for example audience, and all. We will see that, but I haven't set any of them. Okay, so that's something basic about the JWT and uh, details. So let's flip to IntelliJ. Okay, so this was the project that we were doing at last time. Whether this is having nothing but this is basically a basic is using basic authentication with database. So what we will do is that we'll add another layer, the JWT filters on top of this, and this will convert this application to a JWT authenticated application. And I'm not going to repeat all these steps again and again, because if you want to see that, it's there in my previous video, and but I can again go through this just as a recap. So what all the domains are we having? Okay, this is a base entity. This is nothing but act as a base class, which is having only the primary key, and will have the user table, uh, which will have only the username and password, and then we'll have the role, which will take in the ID and the role name, and then you will have role permissions where we will map the permissions to a role. For example, read permission, write permission, delete permission, and we attach to a particular role. And then you'll have the user role where each role is associated with a particular user. Okay, now then we'll have the repositories for each yeah, tables here, each entity here, sorry. So we were using the JPA repositories here. So this is pretty straightforward. So here we'll have a method to find the retrieve the user by its name, and then we'll have a user role where you'll retrieve all the roles associated with the user by the name. Same goes with this role permissions repository where you have a method find by role name where you'll retrieve all the permissions for a particular role. Now we were implementing the what's the service package? Okay, user detail service where you will retrieve the user by the user name passed in, then will give back the user details, and here is how we construct the user details. So in the user details we need to retrieve all the rules and authorities, roles and permissions of that user, and will convert each of the role and the permission to a simple granted authority, and then we'll add all of them to an array list, and then we'll retrieve it. Yes, so that's what it is all about. And then if you go to the configuration class, so what we are doing is that we have a users endpoint. I think we were having the rules as well. I don't know why I did not have it. Yeah, I think we have a roles as well, so maybe I can add that as well here. So if I right, so these two endpoints, there is no security added. Rest of all the endpoints are authenticated. Okay, so now we were having as we had authentication provider being here, and we were setting the password encoder and the user detail service, right? And you also have a password encoder bean which will give the bcrypt password encoded bean. Yes, and also why we had this was Spring Security was blocking the H2 access to the H2 console, so we override the configure method so that this particular URL will be ignored by the Spring Security. That's all this project about. So what you can do is that you can I have given the link of my GitHub repo in the description, so you can go to this uh, location and then just download this and just start from here. All right, so we'll just do that same thing. So if I just download it as a zip, all right, so now we have the application open here. So we have renamed the DB auth and to JWT here. Okay, so let me change that here as well in the POM file as well. Sorry. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is that we need to add a dependency for the JSON Web Token. Right, so let me add that. Okay, so this is a library that is required for this JWT. Okay, so now the first thing what we will do is we'll learn how to create the JWT token and how to pass the JWT token, and then how do we check whether the token is expired or not. Okay, so the easiest way to do this is via unit tests. So let's go to a test case, test class, and let's create a method here. Okay, so I have that code ready. Okay, let me copy that. Okay, so let me copy the test case. All right, so let me make it this short. Okay, so what we need is a key, right? Okay, let me put it first and then I'll explain it. Private static string key, just put it as any string for time being, my key, and string issuer is equal to. All right, that's it. Now let's see the code first. Okay, so generate JWT method, what it does is, first we are getting the current system time in milliseconds. Okay, now we will convert it to the date. We will get the current date in then we'll set the expiration date. So expiration date is, this is in milliseconds, so 5000 millisecond, which is equal to 5 seconds. So expiration date is current date time plus 5 seconds. So that means that once the JW token is generated, it will be expired in 5 seconds. Now this is a signature algorithm which is used, which is HS256. If you go inside this, we can see that you have a variety of options here. You can choose from anything that you like, and you have seen the same thing in the JWT website as well, right? Now the next one is our secret. So how do you sign it with? So you need to generate the signing key. So this is the way that you generate the signing key. So this key is nothing but a string that you have defined here. And first of all, we in real time scenario, what we do is will not hard code the values in here. So you will actually describe this in maybe in the YAML file, and then you will inject it here, right? That's a standard way. Now let's see how do you build the JSON JWT, sorry. So you just use the builder pattern, then set ID. So this is nothing but it can be any UID just to identify it, and then set issued at. So this is the issued date time, and set the subject. So subject is usually the username. So basically you are generating the JSON token against a particular user, right? So that username will be the subject. Now it will be the issuer. Issue is like the currently I have given it as Shabzi, so you can give it according to your need. Then we give a sign with which algorithm and what's the key. Yes, now you should set the expiration date, which we have defined it here, and then dot compact what will does, it will just convert everything to a string. Okay, so that's all about this. And now if you see that you have a test case here, what it does, nothing but it just call this per method and then print it, and then just assert not null. Okay, let's try to run this and see what's the output. Yeah, run. Okay, so it's run successfully. So you can see that this is the JSON that is created, right? Okay, let's try to copy paste this into our website and see what is being created, right? Okay, so this is the one, right? So I'll just copy paste it here. See what all we have selected. This is April 7, 2021. Yeah, it's a current date time, and you have the subject as the username and the gypsy. So whatever we have set, this is showing it, right? Okay. Now let's go back to IntelliJ. Okay, so now we have this thing here. The creation test case is successful. Now what we'll do is that we'll do the parser. Okay, so let me copy paste the code for that as well. Let me put it here. Okay, now let me copy the test case as well. All right, so this is the parser test case. Let's first see the test case, sorry, the code. So what it does is it takes the JWT string as the input, and then it will utilize this method parser dot set signing key and pass claims JWS and then get body. Okay, so if you remember, we have talked about claims. What are claims? So claims are nothing but the data which is present in the payload, right? So let's go inside the claims and see what is inside. So if you see that, you can see that it actually gives you back a hash map, right? And these are the keys: issuer sub or expiration date, IAT issued at, JTI is the ID. So this we have already seen in the in the JWT website. Like if you in the payload, these are all showing there, right? So what exactly this will give you is, okay, so what it does is that it will give you a hash map, and then you can actually get the required data from here like this. See, so this is the test case, pass JWT. So first thing what we are doing is that we are creating the token. So we just call the method, that's it. And then we will call the pass JWT by passing the generated token, and then it receives as a claims. Now I have just given some print statements here. So you can just do as claims dot get subject, or even you can do like this also. If you want, this is also work, claims dot get sub key. So because it's a hash map, this also should work. Okay, so this is the way to pass the JWT. Let me run this. Okay, so you can see that the test case is passed. Let me check the output. So yeah, so subject is chef1, issuer, expiration date, issued at, yes, we got all the details. So this is how you pass JWT. Now we'll check for the validity of the token, right? So let me copy a couple of test cases more. Okay, so the first test case is JWT valid true, right? Okay, so what here we are doing is generate the token, then we are passing it, and then we are checking whether if not claims dot expiration dot before new date. So that means that this will actually returns true because the expiration date has not been reached yet, right? Because we are immediately checking it, right? We are not waiting for because the token will get only after 5 seconds, so we are not waiting for that, right? So this should be successful, right? Perfect. So it is successful, right? Now let's see the other one. With this should be actually an expired token. Why? Because we are generating the token and then we are passing the token and then we are just sleeping for 6 seconds. So 6 seconds means that 5 seconds token will expire, right? So we are sleeping for 6 seconds, so definitely the valid should be false, right? So expiration date is before the current date, right? This will give you the new date, right? New date means the current date time. So this should be false. So I think it's pretty straightforward. So that's why I'm not using any print line statements here. So uh, yeah, that's it. So this is how we will generate the token, we'll pass the token and we'll check the validity of the token. So these are the methods that we will be using in our implementation. So I hope it's pretty clear and we can go and implement that in the project. Yes. All right, so let's create a util package here. Now we need a utility class to have all the generation passing of JWT codes. So we just put JWT util. That's it. Okay, now I will copy the codes that we have already seen. Okay, so let me maximize the code. So we'll add it as component. I think this is bit okay. This is okay. All right, so the same thing that we have seen. Create JWT. Here it just takes the ID and the subject. So we will just pass the ID from the calling method, and the subject is nothing but the username. Okay, so you will have the algorithm as HS256, and here you will get the current system date time, and then we'll convert it to the date from the milliseconds to the date, and then here you will define your key, signing key, and then you will set the JWT claims using this builder. So set ID, the ID which is passed in, this will be nothing but the UID. So in case you want to set something else, you can set it from the calling place, and then set issued at the current date time, and the set subject will be the username passed in, and then issuer is nothing but we have already set here, and I think okay, here I will just change it as my key, and this should be okay. As I told before, ideally these values should come from where the YAML file, and then you will inject it here, right, using that value annotation. So now here what we are doing is the expiry duration, right? Expiry duration here we have set it as 1 hour, right? So in the builder we are not setting the expiry duration. So here we are setting it separately. That expiration is, if anything is mentioned as expiry duration, you just convert it and then create the new date and then set it. Now this one will just serialize it to a string and we send it. So parse JWT is the same as we seen. It will take in a J token and then we'll just pass it using the key, and then you will get the claims and then you will send it back the claims, right? So this is another method to extract the username. So this is also, we have seen this method the how to get the subject out of the claims. So we have it seen before. So nothing but just use the method dot get subject. So that also will return the username as a string. Now is token expires, so this also we have seen. So it will take in the JWT, then you parse it, and then we just check whether this is expired or not using this construct. So it will return a boolean. Validate token. So validate token, what it does is it will take in the JWT and the user details, and then first thing it will do is it will check the username here, and then using this method extract username and then pass in the JWT. Now we just check whether the username we got from the JWT is the same as that is present in the user details, and also check whether the token is expired or not. Okay, so based on that it will send the boolean flag. So this is pretty easy stuff. Now the next one is that we will create the filter, because so what during the basic authentication, what the Spring Security was doing the authentication, right? I mean for each request. So in this case, if the token is issued, then we will actually verify the JSON token, right? Whether it details and it loads the details based on the data present in the token. Okay, so what we'll do is that first we'll create a package here as we'll create a class, we'll put as JWT authentication filter. So this is a filter, and then what it extends is it will extends the once per request filter. So why once per request filter? Because this will ensure that this filter is called only executed once during the per request. So this will ensure that this filter is executed only once per the request. Okay, so let's implement the method here. Okay, all right. So now let me copy some codes here. Okay, so now also I need the util to be auto wired. So let me do that. JWT util. Okay, also I need my user detail service. Okay, this is okay. So we have got it here. Okay, so let's go through the code. So the first thing we are doing is, what's the error here? Let me see this. I think this is one is more. Okay, so the first statement is authorization header. We are extracting the authorization header from the header. Okay, so basically this token will come in as a header, right? So we are just retrieving that, and which is initializing the variables, and then if the authorization header not equal to null, okay, and authorization code starts with bearer. So basically the token JWT token, it starts with bearer and then with a space, and then the token will start, right? So this is how it will comes from the UI. Now what we are doing, just extracting the bearer out of it because the length is 7. So this variable will have now the JWT token. Now we will then extract the username from the token using this method. So we have already seen what is this method and how it will extract, right? Now the next step is if the username not equal to null and security context called dot get context or get authentication, is equal to null. So this actually means that first time anyway this will be null, because when this will be set only when the Sprint security set the logged in user into the context, right? So this filter will run before that. So anyway this will be null. Now it will come inside and then we'll fetch the user details, right? How do you fetch the user details? From user detail service, load by username, right? So we have seen this method earlier, right? Means in the previous video, but still we'll just go into this. So what it does is it will just query the user table, find by name, and then it will pass the date values to the constructor of this. And here in which what we'll do is we will retrieve the roles and permissions of the user, and then we'll create the an array list of the simple granted authority, and then we'll return it, right? So that's what we do here. And I'm sorry, again let me go back. It's yeah. So okay, so where were we? Okay, so we'll go back again. Okay, so now we have got the user details. Now we are then validating the token, right? So to validating the token, what it does is the passed in token and the user details. So just going back here again, so what we are doing here is validating. What we are doing is extract the name, and then whether we check whether it is token is expired or not. That's it. So let me make it a little bigger. Yeah. Now here what now once the token is validated, we'll create the username password authentication token, right, by giving the user details and the credentials we pass as null, and then we'll pass in the get authorities, which is the roles and permissions of that user. And then we set the details, and then once it is done, we will set the username password authentication token to the security context holder. See, basically what this is happening, we are actually, this is a filter, right? Filter which sets it will be called before or no, it will be replaced with our original Spring security filter. So we will actually in the configuration class we will tell the Spring security to use our custom filter, right? So what we have to mimic what Spring security is actually going to do. So here what we are doing is based on the passed in JWT token, we extract the username, we are finding the roles and the permissions of the user, and then we'll create the context and set the data to the context, right? And then will the filter chain will pass to the next one. That's what we are doing in this filter class. Okay, so now what we do is that we'll head to the configuration class, and we need to configure the remaining things there. Okay, so in the configuration class, first thing we need to do is we need to have the authentication manager builder bean. Right, so let me override that. Okay, and then you need to have it as a bean. Okay, why? Because this is actually injected based on the conditional missing bean. I think we can see it here. here. See, just checking it, and then we see that okay, why this is not uh, existing. If you run the controller, that you will get this error while you run the application. So it says that because Boot's authentication manager configuration is conditional on missing authentication manager, authentication provider, and user detail service beans. So so this is actually expected. So if you are using your own custom user detail service, uh, here you have to provide it explicitly. Okay, so now, okay, so the first next one, we need to auto-wire the filter class. It's a JWT authentication filter. Why is it could not auto-wire? Okay, so that means that we haven't annotated it with component. Alright, so now we have to make a change here. The thing is this, we are no longer using the HTTP basic. Right, so now you need to check with the session management. The session management should be stateless, right? So session creation policy dot stateless. All right, now we also need to add the filter. Add filter before JWT authentication filter, comma, or user name password authentication filter dot class. See, so what we are saying, the sprint security, that instead of using this filter, use our custom filter, right? So this is where we have written the logic to extract the user out of the token and then get the details and the set that particular user to the context. I think that's pretty much. We have one more thing remaining, because we haven't added the authentication API here yet. So let me add that. Okay, yeah. So in this one, first let's auto-wire the authentication manager. Okay, now here we need our JWT util as well. Okay, so let's go through the code now. Okay, so we need something called auth request. Okay, so let me add that as well. Let me add it as a new package called request. Okay, so I'm copying the class as well. So let's see what's inside. So this class is a request. Basically it will take the username and password, which will be sent by the UI. Okay, so it is very straightforward one. And if I go back here, I need to take this in. Alright, so now let's see what's the code. So this is the API that the UI will first hit with the username and password, and then the authentication manager will authenticate whether this username passed in is actually a user or not. If it is configured in the system, it will go ahead, otherwise will throw the error invalid credentials. Okay, so once the user system recognize the user, it will just create the token and then send it back. So this we have already seen the methods. Okay, so now we need to configure this API in the configuration class as well. Okay, so we have it configured. Now we'll start the application. Okay, so let's see, this is a post object. So the post request, where this is the API that we are going to hit, and then the authorization will be no auth, and the body you need to pass in like this, right? And then let's hit the endpoint. Perfect. So you can see that the token has been generated here, right? So now let's copy this and we'll hit the endpoint actually. So the next one will be /API/test1, right? Okay, so we'll go to the authorization. Okay, this is fine, and then will not have any body here. I'll remove the body. Okay, and now what we do is we need a authorization here, right? So it should be authorization, header should be authorization, and then you should have strings as bearer, then space this, right? And let me hit it. Sorry, this is not post, this is get. Perfect. So what we have done is we have added the header authorization as a key as a authorization, and then we have added the bearer space, then we copy pasted the token. So what if I just tampered it, let's say. Now I don't think it will be okay, say, let me see what is the do, 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 expiration time that we have given. Okay, so we have given the expiration date as 1 hour. Okay, so I thought it was 5 seconds, but that was in our test case. That's fine. Let me try to tamper this key and then try to send it. See, there's nothing, right? So that means that you can see that there's an error here in the console. We haven't did the exception handling properly here. Otherwise, if we added the controller advice or we were throwing something, we could have got it there in the postman. So here it is thrown into the console. It says that JWT signature does not match. Validity cannot be ascertained and should not be trusted. So that's where if you are tampering the key, it will not work. Okay, let me undo my change and then send it. Yes. So let's try it with the different endpoint. So let's say if I'm trying to do it with test2. Yes, working. Test3. Delete access. Yes. Yes, user L1 access. Test5. Now onwards there will not be any access, I believe. Yes, forbidden. Test5 was for user chef2, and this is for chef3. Perfect. So it's nothing is work. I mean, it's working as expected. Now let's try to hit the uh, authentication with the next user, which is chef2, right? Okay, yeah, so this is a new token got for the user chef2, and let's go to this API and we'll go to the authorization header. We'll remove it. Paste this. Hope there is no body. Yeah, send it. So it's again the get, yeah, test 2 he should be having access, test 3 no, think 4 no, 5 he should be having access, I believe, yes, 6 no. Perfect. Let's try it with the user chef 3 with this authentication as body 3. Here's the token, copy, go to test 1, authorization headers, will change the bearer token as the one which we received. Go to the body, no body, okay, so send it. I think no access, perfect. Second one no access, third one no access, 4 no access, 5 no access, 6 you must be access, white, perfect. Okay, so let's try one. That's all about the endpoints. So let's try one more about the users as well. I think we didn't try it. They should be having access to all, right? See, there's no authority that we have given for the users endpoint, so you can see the things, and then the same goes with the roles as well. Perfect. Okay, now let's try something else. We'll try the expiration date to 5 seconds. Okay, so and we'll just okay, so let's go to the authentication, and we will do it with first user. Okay, let's send it. I think by the time we hit it, it will be already 5 seconds be lost, so let's hurry up. I think it's over anyway, but let's try it because 5 seconds is low. This should say that the token is invalid. Okay, so see, it's invalid, so we have not throwing anything to the console, but it must say that in the console expired JWT exception. See, it says that it's already expired. So I think that's all about this video. Let's go through again. So what we have done, so first we started with our previous project where we implemented the Sprint security using basic authentication with the database, and then we have started adding the JWT layer on top of that. So here we have copied sorry, we have all the entities here where the user role, role permissions and user roles, and then we have the user detail service, my user details entity. So these are all coming from the previous project. So what we have done in this one here, first we started with the JWT util, where we have seen how to create a JWT, how to parse it, and how to check the validity, etc. And then we started building our custom filter class, where we have seen how we can extract the data from the token and then create the authentication token and set it to the security context, right? And then we have also seen in security configuration how to pass the uh, how to add how to call our custom filter ahead of the default Spring filter. I think that's it. So thanks for watching my video.